This presentation was prepared as part of the course on healthcare databases, taught by Dr. Farrokh Alemi from George Mason University's Department of Health Administration and Policy. My name is Forough Nejrabi, and I'm a student in the Health Informatics graduate program. Procedures are subprograms which can be created and saved in the database as database objects. A procedure in SQL is a reusable unit that summarizes the logic of the application. Essentially, a SQL procedure is a group of SQL statements and logic compiled and stored together to perform a specific task. Here you see the illustration of a basic syntax for creating a procedure in SQL. It is important to consider parameters when reviewing procedure codes. Parameters are used to pass values to the procedure. There are three different types of parameters. The in parameter is the default parameter, which always receives the values from the calling program. Within the subprograms, it is a read-only variable and its value cannot be changed. The out parameter is used for getting output from the subprograms. The in-out parameter is used for both giving input and for getting output from the subprograms. Other parts of the procedure syntax include procedure name, which specifies the name of the procedure. Remember that it must be unique. Or replace. This option allows the modification of an existing procedure. Is as. This clause sets the context to execute the stored procedure. The difference is the keyword is used when the procedure is nested into some other blocks. The keyword as is used if the procedure is standalone. The displayed code is a procedure that calculates the likelihood ratios associated with any diagnosis within our dataset. You can see we named our procedure likelihood ratio. In the future, we can easily recall this long code by only using the name of the procedure. This is the main purpose of stored procedures in SQL. We can hide direct SQL queries from the code and improve the performance of database operations, such as to select, update, and delete data. Other advantages of creating procedures in SQL include enhancements to the security. This is because we can grant permission to the user for executing the stored procedure instead of giving permission on the tables used in the stored procedure. Lastly, it is interesting to know that we are able to support nested procedure calls to other SQL procedures or procedures implemented in other languages. In the first line of this code, which begins with the declare command, you will see pink highlights. Those are parameters that were assigned values to in the preceding lines. We needed to write our code in this way to protect ourselves from SQL injection. In this code, we wanted to utilize a particular diagnosis code. Therefore, we set one of the parameters as the diagnosis code. In the last line, using the execute command, we can recall our stored procedure code along with the three parameters to estimate the likelihood ratio associated with the patient's death. So instead of writing that long code from our last slide within this code, we can just recall the name we gave our procedure. To conclude, procedures in SQL not only enhance the possibility of reusing a code, but they also increase the performance of the database. How, you may still wonder? It does this by reducing the traffic of the network by limiting the amount of information sent over the network. The phrase nested queries may sound familiar to you since I mentioned it briefly in an earlier slide. A nested query is a query within another SQL query and embedded within the where clause. A nested query is used to return data that will be used in the main query as a condition to further restrict the data to be retrieved. Subqueries can be used with the select, insert, update, and delete statements, along with the operators like in, between, equal to, less than, greater than, equal to, etc. You will notice that I refer to nested queries as subqueries. That's because the terms are pretty much interchangeable. Suppose we wanted to find a patient's last visit and their diagnosis during that visit. We can write this code in one step to get our answer. If we did not know how to write nested queries, we would have solved our question in 2 steps. There are numerous advantages of nested queries. There are just a few noted on this slide. First, because queries can become quite complex, utilizing nested queries can help isolate the parts into a series of logical steps. Second, nested queries allow you to easily use the results of another query in the outer query, also referred to as the main or parent query. And third, in some cases, nested queries can be more useful and convenient than complex joins and unions. That concludes the lessons on procedures in SQL and nested queries in SQL. Thank you.